Welcome to the Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast, where we explore the unexplained and mysterious phenomena that have occurred throughout the state of Michigan and beyond.
From UFO sightings to ghostly encounters, we delve deep into the stories, the evidence, and the theories behind these strange events.
We are your hosts. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Wayne.
We are an educator duo that after an encounter with a triangular UFO in 2018 in Michigan, we decided to investigate UFOs and the paranormal. In this podcast, we will be speaking with eyewitnesses, experts, and researchers to uncover the truth about some of the most intriguing cases of paranormal activity in and around Michigan.
Our goal is not to convince anyone of the existence of these phenomena, but rather to provide a platform for discussion and exploration. So, buckle up and join us on this journey down the paranormal rabbit hole.
On an escalator.
All right, everybody. Hello. How's it going out there? Welcome to another episode of the Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast. Tonight, we're going to have a great show for you. But first, it is Sunday, May 25th, 2025, and we're coming to you from deep within inside our bunker in the shadow of the great Motor City, Detroit, Michigan, on a sunny and cool night, as we get ready to dive into extraterrestrials and UFOs in the Bible, as we are joined by author, experiencer, and multiple appearances on the History Channel's well-known Ancient Aliens program, Reverend Michael J.S. Carter. But first, go ahead, grab that drink, grab a snack, settle in as we prepare to discuss UFOs and ETs in the Bible and the intersection with spirituality and religion. So this is going to be a great show. But first, you guys know the deal. We have to go ahead and talk, and I am pretty much solo tonight. Michelle's running chat as she's not feeling well. So I'll be here with you, and we'll bring on Michael here very shortly. So if you have a story you would like to tell us, or you want to contact the show, you guys know you can email us at mi.ufo.podcast@gmail.com. Also, if you want to support the podcast, you can do so with PayPal, Super Chats, buy us a coffee, check out our merchandise store, or join the Patreon. All of those links can be found down below in that show description. If you do decide to become a YouTube member or a Patreon member, you will get a shout out during the intro and be listed in the credits at the end of the show as a thank you for your support. Also, we can't grow as a show without you guys doing those things. Smashing that like button, subscribing to the channel, and sharing us out. Only about 54% of you that are watching this show, either now or in the future, are subscribed. Help us out. You subscribe, we get put out there with the algorithm, and more people can come on and watch the show. Also, another thing to remember is that you can find this show as an audio podcast, and that is pretty much everywhere. You can look us up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, among others. I think we're even on Spreaker now, or Speaker, or something like that. So they're all over the place. So you can go out there and follow the audio version of the show and leave us a review. That also helps us grow. And last but not least, next Sunday, June 1st, is still in the works for a guest. So, or it may be a solo show. We'll let you guys know. Just keep an eye on the YouTube channel, and you'll see updates coming from us. So with that being said, I think it's that time. And instead of going into a long bio, because a lot of you already know who our guest is, Reverend Michael J.S. Carter. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring him on now. So, Reverend Carter, thank you for joining us.
Oh, hey, man. Thanks for having me on. I was looking forward to this. It's been a day. I had services today, and then it's Memorial Day weekend. So this is a good time to be with you guys.
Yeah, and I find this kind of topic very, very interesting because
Mm,
there are a lot of people who have their own takes on this intersection between what's in the Bible and UFOs and aliens and some of the experiences people have with the extraterrestrials or interdimensionals, non-human intelligences, whatever, and they equate it to religious things. And then I've had other people talk about having horrible things done to them, and by
yeah.
invoking the name of Jesus or God and being a very religious person and calling out for help, they will leave the person alone. So
Yes.
it's very interesting all the different ideas and experiences that people are having. And
Hmm.
so one of the things I wanted to start everything off with is, I know you do this constantly. I've seen plenty of interviews with you and but we have some people on this channel that may have never experienced your work or know what you've done. And can you briefly share your personal experiences with contact and how they led you to write alien scriptures?
Sure. I First of all, thank you, the audience, for taking time out on your Sunday to spend some time, and I'm glad to be here. Yeah, I'll give you the truncated version of some things. I was raised in the Baptist tradition, and I could give you chapter and verse when my memory was better and I was much younger, and I followed that doctrine. Jesus is Lord and Savior. Um, Devil, God, I'm saved, you're not, that kind of thing. And I wasn't a Star Trek person until probably about 5 years ago. I know people are saying, where's the rock you were under? But I just didn't. I was never into sci-fi or I'm making up for that now. And so that was it. That's my background. Not anymore, but that's where I started. So I was always into religion, loved it. Came from a religious family. Then on December 28th, 1989, I was at I was in Mexico in Cancun with my girlfriend at the time, and we decided to go to the pyramids in Chichen Itza and Tulum, right on the Yucatan there. And, Mayan civilization, we're still trying to figure out some of those things. And it was just fascinating. And so when we got back to New York, which is where I lived there for almost 30 years, I had been invited to a party and my girlfriend decided to stay home. We got off at JFK, got back to Manhattan, and I wanted to go. I wanted to show off. I was golden, my hair was changed, and I said, "Whoa, yeah." And I went to a party down in Hell's Kitchen, and no beverages, no alcoholic beverages were served, and people oohed and ahed, and we talked about what happened, and I caught the subway back uptown. So I came home, kissed her, got in bed. Now I don't know what time it was. I'm assuming it was early morning. And there was a being, I don't know if I sensed them, but there was a being that looked like this at the edge of my bed. Now, they didn't have the robe on. I had a artist put the Buddha robe on. But this is what they looked like. They weren't gray, they were like chalk white, but they had this on. This is the material. It was like a NASCAR kind of tight fitting suit, but it looked like Reynolds wrap. I thought I was going to have a heart attack, and it looked at me, and I looked at him. I'm say him, could have been an it, a she, and there was a blue light around him, and then there was this big white light. She would not wake up. I was so frightened. And finally, I pulled the covers up over me and I got into the fetal position. So this is December 28, 1989. And we were on the 15th floor of the Excelsior Hotel, which is still there, 45 West 81st, between Columbus and Central Park West. And I felt like I was outside because I heard the wind and the temperature had changed. And when I finally pulled the covers down, nobody was there. I was back in my room. And my girlfriend woke up. We talked about it. She's a very deeply spiritual woman. We're still close friends. We're not married anymore. And she remembered that night. And then I started getting visits from them every full and new moon. And they would come and I'd be paralyzed. And I would feel electricity going through me, and they were working like they worked on my throat chakra. That I knew for sure. At one time, they stuck a syringe in the back of my head, and then in my crown. And then a couple months, so that went on for about 6 to 8 months. And in between that time, I saw reptilians came and visited me. And then I had a healing of a blood clot by a Nordic person. This is an artist rendition, obviously.
Continue to hold that up for a second. I want to
Yes.
focus on it. There you go.
And
So,
then
like
then I had a praying mantis person visit me. This person visited me on July 4th, 2013. This person visited me in 2019. And
Okay.
so it started. I'm not a big nuts and bolts person. That's not how my mind works. I'm more interested in the spiritual, religious aspect of this. That's just how I work. I think that's important. The other stuff, national security, back engineering, but for greater minds than me, than I. But I got into the healing because of them, and I started looking in the Bible. And I get calls from people, and people say, can I still be a person of faith and still believe in UAPs? And I say, hell yeah. Our ancestors were doing it in the Bible. Because I look at the Bible, which is different things to different people, but I think it's one of the testaments of our ancestors saying, this is what it was like to share the planet with these beings. That's what that book is about. Yes, there's beautiful poetry, there are life lessons in it, not negating that. But this is a book that is telling us this is what it was like, because people don't like the word, but we were invaded. Now you can call it an intervention, you can, arose by any other name, but our planet was invaded. Different beings at different times with different names. Sometimes they were called the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, the Elohim, and different cultures talk about them. The Mahabharata, the Upanishads in India, Native American folklore talks of these beings who come from the sky. Obviously, the Judeo-Christian scriptures. And so these beings were here. Some of them were friendly. Some of them could have gave a you-know-what. And some of them wanted to see Project Earth, how this experiment was going to turn out. They're still probably watching to see. And there were some who wanted to keep us ignorant and slaves and didn't even know we were naked, like in the Garden of Eden. And so that's how I got on this journey.
Well, how did your religious background evolve then in light of your encounters? Like, you came from a Baptist background, which is generally pretty strict, fundamental,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So how did you evolve where you are today, coming from that and then having these encounters?
Well, great question. before they came, and I want to be clear with this, I was working on myself. I had evolved past the dogma and the doctrine, the orthodoxy of my faith tradition. I just could not keep believing what they were telling me. I couldn't question what they were telling me. I knew really good people who were of different faith traditions and no faith tradition. And it was hard for me to reconcile the Old Testament God with what Jesus was saying. And it was hard for me to realize that a loving God would barbecue someone in eternity because they didn't believe him, or, it just didn't make sense anymore. And so I started getting into metaphysics, into psychic phenomenon, getting into the powers of the mind, getting into more about the teachings of Jesus versus what I was taught. And so I just was getting further and further away. I had a spiritual life. I was meditating more. I was praying, and it just didn't add up. So that's how I got away. And so I was drifting away anyway. I was reading existential philosophy, that kind of thing. And so when they came, it kind of expedited all of that. And the reason why I want to say it was important, because I was already, it wasn't like they came and waved a magic wand and voila. That's why I think that's why a lot of people don't follow the spiritual path, because it's hard work. You have to look at yourself. I was in therapy for some issues coming up in my family of origin. So I was on the hero's journey. I was on the shero's journey, peeling the onion. And then I read a book by Dr. Barry Downing, retired Presbyterian minister, friend and colleague of mine to this day. He's retired. He wrote a book back in 1968 called The Bible and Flying Saucers. Now, he wasn't an experiencer, but this was like water to a man in the desert, because here was a minister writing about UFOs in the sacred scriptures. So I was like, wow. And then I met Zachariah Sitchin, who was a neighbor of mine when I lived in New York City. And of course, I was reading all of his stuff about the Anunnaki. And so the table was being set, and then I started reading other religious texts about this topic. Does God Drive a Flying Saucer by R.L. Dion? There were just more and more books coming in my energy, and I guess I was drawing them. And then I said, well, wait a minute, there really isn't a contradiction here. If this brother came and visited me in my bedroom on December 28, 1989, and they continued up until 2019. So if he was here in 1989 AD, then they've probably been here in 1989 BC and before, which lo and behold, they have been. And so I realized, and I went through that whole thing where I was an atheist. I could, it blew me away, an ontological shock. I was a Buddhist. I was an agnostic. I touched all the bases, but because I'm a man of the West, and by that I mean I'm educated in the West, Western culture, Western classics, and all those things inform me, but I always came back to the teachings of Jesus. Now, I'm a liberal Christian, and I don't even like to use the word Christian sometimes. I'm a follower of the teachings of Jesus, which are different than being a Christian these days, at least to my mind. And I'm not here to take away anybody's faith or just to argue. No, this works for me. But I realized that I had to go through all that to come back to where I began, but know it on a deeper level. And Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, the Buddha, they were on the planet when these beings were on the planet. They knew about these people. And so I was just, and people like us, following their footsteps. One quick thing, because I know I'm da 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 da.
No, keep going.
Listen, if you are a Christian, this is my opinion, conservative, liberal, what have you. If I say to you, I saw an angel last night, people would say, oh my God, oh my God, that's a miracle. But if I say to you, I saw an ET, people want to medicate me and lock me up. If you are a Christian, you believe in UFOs because these beings are coming down from the sky. Okay? So if you're a Christian, you automatically believe in UFOs. Now, you may want to argue whether they're demonic or what have you, but you cannot have that religion and not say that you don't believe. If you believe in angels, then you believe in UFOs.
Well, an angel is a non-human intelligence, right? If
It,
we break that down.
yes, yes. But here's the thing, brother Wayne. Angel, right? Angelos in Greek, Malek or Malakim in Hebrew. See, angel doesn't tell you, angel tells you their function.
Mm-hmm.
Messenger,
Yeah, messenger. Yeah.
diplomat. Yeah, okay. But they don't tell you where they came from. And we're used to see, and I'm not saying that angels don't have wings, but in the Bible, they don't have wings. Our ancestors drew those wings to let you know they could fly. And some of them were friendly, like when they rescued Daniel, when they rescued Peter, they got him out of prison, remember, in Acts. And of course, they helped Paul in the shipwreck, you know. And some of them, like Yahweh, we were nothing to them. We were nothing. And so, just like there are people who are benevolent and have your best interest, and some, that's the same thing with these beings. Some are neutral, some are helpful, and some of them aren't. And so, it's people need to be able to know that we live in a populated universe. There's all kinds of life around. It's probably in this room that I'm not seeing. But, and so most of what we've been taught is wrong, or at least
So,
it's not the full story.
so would you say that when you started pulling away from the Baptist tradition and started looking elsewhere, did you feel or discover that maybe there was some kind of misinterpretations that were being taught as
Ooh,
straight dogma that really
ooh,
started
boy.
pushing you away?
Ask the questions, brother. And you know the answer to this question. Yeah, no, brother, I did. I started reading Zechariah, and I don't read Hebrew like I did in seminary. Okay, so but I will tell you for the audience out there, you don't have to know Hebrew. Well, all you have to do is look at the word. Some of the words are used in the sentence now, in the sentences. You must remember that the Bible that is sold to the average person is not the same translation as what but biblical scholars use. And so the whole interpretation hinges on the word Elohim. In Genesis, is it 6? Yeah. The
That's
sons of the
the
sons of
sons of
God,
God. Yeah.
yeah, come down to the daughters of men. But also, I think it's Genesis 3 when they talk about let us make man in our image. And it's plural. There's just no way you can get around it. It's plural. Elohim. Now, no one really knows what the word Elohim means. No scholar really does. But we do know it's plural. And so, us, who's the us? Let us make man in our image. That's more than one. Now, some people have argued, Michael, they're talking about the Trinity. Well, the Trinity as a concept didn't come about until the second century. Then some people may say, well, there's all the helpers and what have you. Well, maybe, but if the word where you see the word Lord, it should be translated, or the word God, as Elohim. The Elohim said, let us make man in our image. The book of Enoch goes into great detail about this. And there are also names of other Elohim in the Bible, right? There's Kamash, there's Asherah, there's Yahweh, there's Milcon. I mean, they're all there. Who are these people? The Ten Commandments talks about, Yahweh is a jealous God. You shouldn't even worship any other gods. That means there were other gods there. You
Yep.
shouldn't even depict an image of them. And so early Judaism, what's the word? It begins with an H. Well, put it like this. It was not monotheistic. And we were taught that monotheistic is supposed to be the way to go. But no, what the word I'm looking for is, it begins with an H, but it means that you acknowledge that there are other gods. There's Michael, Wayne, and Michelle, but I think I'm going to roll with Michael.
Well,
But you're acknowledging that. I'm sorry.
there was a hierarchy.
Yes,
Absolutely.
a military hierarchy.
But at the top was Yahweh, was
Was
Godhead,
Yahweh.
right?
But that's if you believe Yahweh is God. I don't see that. That's the other thing that got me away. I could not believe in Yahweh as a God because he was jealous, he was angry, he committed genocide, he was concerned whether you were circumcised or not. He didn't want intermarriage. He didn't want. No, it's not Hasidic. It's another word that means that you worship more than one God. So let's say they're polytheistic. It'll probably come to me later. So that's how I got away from that, because Yahweh just didn't seem like. And if he was God, why did you have to go in other people's lands and take their lands like you did? In these biblical stories, that doesn't sound like a God. So in 2009, now I wasn't raised Catholic, but Pope Benedict, the 16th, nobody said anything, but he came out and said at an encyclical that Yahweh is not the name for God. Don't use that name anymore because that doesn't mean God. He also came out later and said that don't be surprised that there are extraterrestrials in the Bible. Wow, I was like, whoa. 400 years ago, you would burn me at the stake for saying what I'm saying now. Now this institution is saying, what changed? Mm-hmm. Monsignor Baladucci talked about, he's the late Monsignor, he was one of the Vatican exorcists. He talked about, he came out and said that people who tell you that they've seen extraterrestrials, that they're not crazy, they're not psychotic, they're not neurotic, they're telling you that they had contact with a different type of being. So here you have the Catholic Church talking about this. They got the Vatican Observatory and what have you. So I'm a Protestant minister, but no one else is really talking about this. My colleague, Dr. Barry Downing, is older now. He's tired. He's fought the good fight. But I mean, once in a while, he'll still come out and talk about it, but he's in his 80s now. So outside of the Vatican, who else religiously is talking about it? And I get it. Why not? I get it. Because we can barely get past, the tech. So now you're going to come out and say, well, wait a minute. I mean, I get it. But eventually, when all this disclosure stuff really comes to a head, people are going to have religious questions. And the churches have not said anything. Not good. Not good.
Yeah.
You got to get in this conversation. And I get it. Why not? I got friends who say, Michael, I agree with what you say, but if I say that, I'm going to lose my tenure at this seminary. I agree with what you say, but I'm going to lose my job. I got kids. I'm not saying this is all big conspiracy. I got it. I'm fortunate. I don't have a pope or a bishop in my denomination that'll say, hey, young man, you need to dial it back. Now they're not happy, but I'm not in danger of losing my congregation.
Sure.
So, but we've got to have this conversation. The churches have not weighed in at all. A few people will say, oh, Michael, that's the devil. People there's a contingent in the Pentagon and Congress who don't want to talk about it because they're demons. But no, they're not all demons. Stop it. And so we've got to have this conversation. In the Mesopotamian text with Enlil and Enki, and, they come out and say that these beings had a hand in creating us. I don't think that means there is no creation or God or whatever word you want to use. It doesn't mean that, but it does mean that these beings were advanced and they gave us some reboots and that kind of thing. But eventually we need to have this conversation because people are going to want answers. They're going to be scared. They're going to be confused. I've met a couple clergy. I was in a chat group with some all around the planet, and I had a couple colleagues. They were Catholic in London, and they said, "Michael, if what you're saying is true, I have to give up my faith." I said, "Why?" They said, "I just can't believe that. I cannot accept that." I'm like, "Whoa, it's big stuff."
Yeah. Well, in the human mind, our brain works, in the left right. I don't want to say it like that, but like the good evil paradigm. You have the others, which are bad because they're others than us. And
Yes,
then they have
yes,
us as bad because we are other than them.
yes,
In what we need to understand about this, with me and Michelle's experience that we had and all of the people that we've talked to over the last 5 years, there for us to have true disclosure and have these conversations, we have to understand that this is not going to be an easy conversation. It's not left, right, evil, good.
exactly.
Everything is nuanced. Everything needs to be examined and clearly looked at. Like, for instance, like for me, I went to some very deep, like, researchers that spoke the ancient Hebrew and broke down the words, because they didn't have vowels and everything else.
Yes,
And so I see, and even some people in chat, I've seen Satan, right? Which is not a singular being. It is Hashatan. It is a translational error, which means the adversary.
that's right.
Now, the creature that was in the Garden of Eden was called the Nakash. And the Nakash could mean many different things.
That's right.
There's
But it
a
means
serpent.
serpent,
It could mean
reptilians.
a reptilian, shining one,
Yes,
a
it
shining
does,
one.
but it doesn't mean evil.
No.
As a matter of fact, he tells the truth. Yahweh says, if you eat that, you're going to die. And but they didn't die, but they did find out how to reproduce.
Mm.
And I'm glad you brought that up because then when we go further in Genesis, when they're building this tower, which Zechariah says is a rocket ship, it's a but it's something that they're trying to reach the gods. And what does the Elohim say? What does Yahweh say? We need to put a stop to this because otherwise they're going to be like us. Again, there's the plural. In other words, they're going to be like the gods. And so they muddle it up. Everybody's speaking a different language. They destroy whatever that thing was. It wasn't a tower. We're not going to destroy you because you violated the building codes. And so those mistranslations are what, and obviously there were edits in the 6th century, 7th, 8th century BC by Hezekiah and his grandson Josiah. Yes, they rewrote stuff to make it monotheistic. Most scholars agree on that. But look how that's gone. To this day, we're still arguing over this. The Bible is not a God story. The Bible is a story of the tribe of Jacob, because that's all they really talk. Not all of the Jewish folks, not because you had the Moabites and the Hittites, and it's about the tribe of Jacob, and it's about their experience with Yahweh. That's what the Bible is about. It's not a God story. It can't be a God story. And I was, because it doesn't make sense as a God story. And that's why because people are saying, why would God do this? Why would God tell them to go there and throw the baby's head up against the wall and all? You can't explain that. You know what I'm saying? And I was taught that Yahweh was Jesus's father, but Jesus never mentions Yahweh, not once in the New Testament. How come that? Why is he not talking about his father? And plus, because his father sounds a little more loving and merciful and compassionate than our brother Yahweh, who has anger management issues. And so it's because of the mistranslations and the edits that were done. And so here we are today. Yahweh is given the land and given the tribe. Remember, they're all divvied up. Elyon divvies it up. So Yahweh is a junior Elohim in this whole thing. And he gets the tribe of Jacob. And the tribe of Jacob has no land. He doesn't get any land. So he has to get them to fight against other Elohim and take land. It's right there. It's not like I'm making this up. It's right there in the Bible. I have to get my notes here.
Well, I know I'm looking at my notes and going, oh my God, I'm going way off here. But let me just state my understanding of this. And I don't want to get into a theological discussion because I'm not a theological person at all. I've just done enough digging to probably be dangerous and make a lot of people angry.
Well, that's what I do.
All right, so we're on common ground there. So
no, we're not debating this. One thing we agree with, that there are UFOs and ETs in the Bible. That once you got that, you got the gist of it.
Well, okay, so my understanding of when it was like the killing of babies, even killing the animals and things when these wars were happening, that these were legit spiritual combat wars amongst these creatures, these fallen ones that had humans that set up religions around them. And God was like, they must be cleansed. They must go away. These people are evil over here, over there. They're worshiping serpents. They're doing this. They're doing that. And my understanding is that in that time, it was almost like a galactic war. Like these separate beings that were here on the planet were having humans worship them and doing all of this stuff that was against the commandments of God. And then that's why he's so vicious. He was a warrior. He was a war god at that time, trying to wipe out these falling ones that rebelled against him. Now that's kind of my understanding. You know, the one, what is it, 1/3? The 1/3 of the angels that were cast out that rebelled against God, or 2/3?
It was 200 angels, at least according to the book of Enoch.
Right.
Some Jasa, and he lists the names, and they came down. But
they taught man about war and magic.
Well, they taught him a lot of other things. But remember, these writers are trying to say that there's only one God, and there wasn't only one God. There were many gods, and no matter
they were
how,
fighting.
and no matter how, that's right. And we were fighting for them and with them. But what kind of God? If I'm a God, why do I have to wipe out anybody? I'm God. Why do I have to see? That's the premise. And if your premise is wrong, then everything else is going to be wrong. Okay. Okay, hold on. I'm reading from the Hebrew book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah 13, verse 14. Oh, I'm sorry, 12, but I'm going to go to 14. It says, "Thus said the Lord God of Israel." And then he goes, "Every jar should be filled with wine." And verse 14. "And I will smash them one against the other, parents and children alike, declares the Lord." And remember, when you see Lord, it's Elohim. But it says, "declares the Lord, no pity, compassion, or mercy will stop me from destroying them." Does that sound like a God to you? And does it sound like Jesus is God?
It sounds like
This
a
is the
warrior.
Hebrew.
Yeah. That
Okay,
sounds
yeah,
like a
yeah, it
leader.
is a warrior.
Yeah.
Yahweh was a warrior God,
Yeah.
but he wasn't there is no word in Hebrew that talks about an omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient being. They don't have a word for it. That was put in later. But when you it's right here in plain sight. So but when you ask that question, if you're a kid, you're a troublemaker. And this is why I have atheistic friends, I have agnostic friends, and they say, "Michael, I don't know if," well, the atheists say there is no God. Okay. My agnostic friends say we don't know. I just can't believe in the same God they believe in. And I say I don't believe in that God either. You see, but we've been taught not to question that. But you can't, if you worship a God that that says it's okay to commit genocide, then you're going to say it's okay to commit genocide. If you worship a God that is misogynistic, then you're going to be, because you're going to have to make up excuses why you do it, because the God you worship does it. And we have that today. We're supposed to be a Christian nation. Does this look like this Christianity that was trying to come out of the stories of the past? No,
I mean, come on.
no.
Our capital is set up to the goddess Columbia. What the hell is that all about?
I don't
I mean,
know.
the District of Columbia. What? Who
I
is
mean,
she?
all I know is that, and all I'm saying is this: I don't have a problem with people believing, different names for this. I don't have a problem with that at all. I'm just talking about for me, because we were asking my journey. I started reading and thinking and trying to back some of this stuff up, talking to people, and I couldn't do that. I couldn't keep following this guy who was talking, in the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah has to eat some excrement. What kind of God would have someone do that? Well, I mean that, it's rhetorical, but it's not. And so, this is where my journey took me. Now, I'm not saying everybody's journey has to take them there. Here, this is Ezekiel.
Oh, perfect.
Ezekiel
Because I got him on the list next.
Ezekiel 4, right? This is the Nevi'im. This is the book of Ezekiel. It's the Hebrew English translation. Ezekiel is talking to Yahweh, okay, who's called the Lord. He's angry with Ezekiel. Chapter 4, verse 12. So he's telling Ezekiel to eat excrement he says, "Eat it as a barley cake. You shall bake it on human excrement before their eyes. So says the Lord, shall the people of Israel eat their bread, unclean among the nations to which I will banish them." Then he says, "Then I said, O Lord God, my person was never defiled, nor have I eaten anything that died of itself or was torn by beast. from my youth until now, nor has foul flesh ever entered my mouth. In other words, I've always kept kosher. This is how he answers him. So he said, Ezekiel says, he answered me. See, I allow you cow's dung instead of human excrement. Prepare your bread on that. Now, people aren't going to be preaching this verse on Sunday, but it's right there. What kind of God, what kind of person would say, okay, don't eat this, eat the cow excrement instead?
Yeah, he said eat SHIT.
Come on, man. Come on.
Yeah, who does that?
Come
Well,
on.
speaking of Ezekiel,
Jeez, bro, Christmas.
right. You highlight several biblical passages, kind of like
Oh, I got more. I got more, but
right.
all of them aren't like that. Some, some are like,
Yeah.
this is the God that Jesus is talking about, his Father.
Yeah.
Or this is, that's not. I'm using those are there. I didn't make them up, but on a more serious note, it's just different. Jesus and Yahweh, I don't think they would even get along.
Yeah. Well, like Ezekiel's wheel, all right, the Nephilim, the Elijah's chariot as possible ET encounters. Which one do you think is the clearest indicator of being a ET encounter?
Well, they both are. They both are. Elijah gets taken up on a flying chariot. Elijah never dies. Okay, he gets taken up. Ezekiel, when you read Ezekiel, because they call it the vision of Ezekiel, but it's really clear it's not a vision because they pick him up and drop him off places. And he's trying to, when you read it, he's on the river Chabar, he's in Babylon, he's in Iraq, modern day Iraq. And he's trying to describe what's going on, his mind. See, because remember, they're using the language of their day. They're trying to describe the technology. Now, we look at that and we say, that sounds like a UAP. That sounds like, that's what that sounds like, or that sounds like a wormhole he's talking about. See, we have the language for it. They didn't. And so they're both telling you, they are both contactees. They are both experiencers. And they're dealing with the political. I mean, it really burns me up when I go to UFO conferences or I talk to people and they say, "Oh, I don't want to get into the political." How can you not? The whole thing is political. The Bible's a political book. It's talking about the tribe of Jacob dealing with these ETs, and they're talking about they're fighting each other. Those are religious wars.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't tell me you don't know. Just I don't want to get into the political. Well, the whole thing is political.
Yep.
Well, so anyway.
Well, I was just gonna say, what about like people who are critical of these stories and saying that they're like symbolic or visionary? They're not literal. How would you respond to that?
I will respond. Look at the archaeology. The archaeology is that. How can
Bingo.
that? We have. It reminded me. Remember, they said it was no city. Troy didn't exist from the Trojan War, right? And then this archaeology proved that it existed. Okay, we're still trying to figure. Right? Yeah, we're still trying to figure out if there was an Atlantis. Casey talked about Atlantis and what have you. Sure, looks like there was. And why would Plato make that up? Why would the Babylonian priest Berossus make that up? Why would the Egyptian priest who told them, why would they make that up? You see? And so it's just that resistance that this can't be true. Because listen, if you spent all of your life on a theory, so now you've got tenure, you've got books written, you've done your homework, you do lectures, and all of a sudden this new information comes out that makes all the work you did obsolete. You're not going to let go of it so easy either.
Right.
It's very difficult to get someone to change their mind when their paycheck it depends on it.
Sure.
You see, and so and that's just the way it is. And so here we are. Here we are with our our leaders, our elected officials are having hearings on this now. It's the disclosure is spoon fed, but that's just the way it's going to be. No president, I think, is going to come out on the White House lawn and say, guess what? We been lying to you for 90 years. Some people lost their lives because of it. We've made some treaties that maybe we shouldn't have made. And we just want to tell you that today. That's suicide.
Mm-hmm.
That's career suicide. No one's going to do that. We're already in disclosure. It's just not as fast as we'd like it, but we're in disclosure. And I think we need to wrap our minds around that.
Yeah, that's going to be rough for some to do. And I think that's why, like you said, the churches and these church leaders need to get together and figure out how this is going to happen. Because one way or the other, they're going to have to deal with the people.
Yeah. Yes.
When it happens.
No, it will. And there are people working on that for sure. I know. But it's going to be slow. It's going to be, but we've got to do it. And again, It doesn't mean that there is no God. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is that the stories that we were told, they just weren't true, and they were rewritten. And religion, the ugly side of religion is that it's used to control people.
Yeah.
And that a lot of people knew that these things weren't true. How do you think people may react to the possibility? I'm not saying that it's true, but how would you react to the possibility that Jesus may have been, a biologic entity that was half human and half Elohim or what have you? That will blow people out of the water. That the Mesopotamian texts, the Sumerian texts, Akkadian, Babylonian talk about these beings creating us. Plato talks about this. So that's the game changer. And I think we can handle it if it's handled correctly. Will there be people who will jump out of windows and go kind of crazy? Yeah. But that's going to happen anyway. But if we're going to grow up and become part of this galactic federation, become part of this galactic world, we have to get our act together, not be ruled by technology. You can be deeply spiritual and use technology, but we don't. We got the technology. We don't have the spirituality, so we may blow ourselves up. But we have to grow up. Remember that book by Arthur C. Clarke, Childhood's End, right? We're going to have to, Chaim Mashed, the former brigadier general of Israel, said back in 2006 that there was a galactic federation, that we have bases on Mars and the moon. Now, why would he lie about this? He's not going to get anything from this. And he said that there's a council, there is a galactic federation, and that there's some ETs who want disclosure and there's some ETs who don't. But if we want to be at the table and instead of being talked about, there's an old saying, right? If you're not invited to the table, that means you're on the menu. If we're going, and he said that we have to, he implied that we weren't ready yet, not because we were going to blow ourselves up and so warlike, which we are, but that we don't know how to use the technology yet. And when we get to a certain point, then we would be invited in to this federation. So we're not there yet.
Yeah.
And there's some beings who want it and some beings who don't. Believe me, if there's going to be disclosure, human beings aren't going to be in charge of it. When these star people decide, they may do it whenever they want to do it. That's why I think there's this speed up. We got to get it out. All of a sudden, it's the urgency. We got to get the people out. We got to let them know. I'm wondering why that is.
Hmm.
The other
Well,
thing the other thing I just want to say very quickly
sure.
is that I love the whistleblowers. I know they're risking a lot to come. Grudge, Brother Lou, Elizondo, you know, what's the brother's name? Gallaudet, the admiral whose specialty is the underwater UFOs. I think, but we need to be careful because what's happening is the military is taking over the narrative. And people like you and me, everyday people, we're kind of like country bumpkins, because we're not fighter jet pilots or airline pilots. I think we need to watch that
Yep.
because if you take over the narrative, they're already taking over the nomenclature. We're going to say UAP now instead of UFO. Arose by any other name. I get some of it. They're not ETs, they're biologics or non human biologics. I get it. But don't forget, because some of these beings are telling us things that they're not telling them. Look at Chris Bledsoe,
Right.
okay? And so now they're all over Chris, FBI, CIA, and all these alphabets. But because they're telling him stuff that they're not telling them. So, we may have information that they don't know about. So you just can't have the military controlling this whole thing. And that's what's happening now. And I think we need to be very leery of that because they'll be the ones who'll say, "Oh, Michael, no, that didn't happen to you." Or we're going to dismiss that. That's fake news. We'll tell you what's real. Just keep an eye on that. There are no civilians coming forth.
Yeah.
Why is that?
They're not interested in hearing what the civilians have to say.
And that's where it's dangerous.
Well, and what's interesting is that Christopher Mellon took an interest in me and Michelle's case. And we've been trying to talk personally with him. I still haven't heard anything, but through a mutual friend, Micah Hanks, he sent us some information from a high-ranking official in the Navy, and he wanted us to look at it. And it was pretty much dead on what her and I experienced. I mean, just a few little changes, but um, so they're interested in talking to people, on the down low, in the shadows, the normal people that are doing things like this now, because we had nobody to turn to. And we wanted to talk to people. We wanted to hear other people's story. And we wanted everybody to think, hey, you are not alone in this. There is something going on and we should try to figure it out. And so I think and this is just speculation on my part, but I think they are talking to people. You just don't know that you're talking to them, and
But I respect that. But I'm
yeah,
saying we don't need all the secrecy. We
correct.
need the transparency.
Correct.
It's like an old therapeutic. You're as sick as your secrets.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
what's the big deal, ladies and gentlemen? Wayne and his wife Michelle. Let's listen to their experiences. They're similar to what we have. We're talking to one another. We're comparing notes. Why does it have to be?
Well, what they always want to do, they want to weaponize things.
Well, I'm just saying when it doesn't have to be military. It could be when
Oh, right.
when one group is controlling a narrative. I don't care whether the narrative is how do you make spaghetti and meatballs. There's a problem. There's a
Yeah.
problem. That's all I'm trying to say. Let's kind of democratically kind of put it. And yeah, I'm not talking about giving away government secrets. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about we got in this mess because of all these secrets.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
now we got secrets to cover the secrets to cover the secrets. That's all.
yeah. What about somebody who would claim, that you are reading and people that believe the same kind,
Mhm.
and it's not just you, but
Yeah.
um are reading a modern UFO lens into these ancient texts. Do you think that's a fair critique, or is it time we consider or reconsider these texts with fresh eyes? Like,
Yeah, yeah. You know what? You know what? No, that's a great question. I just, I'll be 70 years old in 2 years. I just don't have time to argue about that anymore. I'll just say, I just say, okay, that's your interpretation. I don't have to be right. I'm just telling you where my research has led me. Because
100%.
then we get into who's right and who's wrong and da da da, and then that's a distraction. Because on one level, it's two levels, probably more. This research has led me, and I'm not alone. I could be wrong, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But on a theological level, another part of that is I know what you believe by how you treat me. Okay? So you can go to Bible study every Wednesday night. I can go to the mosque on Friday and go to, the Shabbos for, I can go to the synagogue and I can do all the right things, on the exterior. But I really know what you believe by the way you treat other human beings, how you treat the animal kingdom. That's when I know what you believe. Now, those are kind of apples and oranges, and I know you weren't talking about that. But what does it? It doesn't matter what you believe unless you live it.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you believe, and I'm going to look at how you live. Yes, you may have a bad day. I'm not going to, but I'll know that. But all I'm saying is, this is an idea whose time has come, and if someone else has a better explanation, I will say, okay, that makes more sense. From where I'm sitting right now, and for doing this for over 20 years, I'm here to tell you, our government is telling us, they're the last to catch on. You and I knew this before, that we are not alone in the universe. And that probably our religions originated because of our contacts with these beings, because they were godlike, and because we didn't know how to deal with their technology. They were gods to us. But we know that they drink, they make love, they fight each other, they kill each other. Okay, they're called the Titans in the Greek folklore. Zeus, they get drunk, they make love, they get in fights, they sleep, they eat. In the Bible, they eat. They're not little wispy little angels that, they're just flying around with their little wands and whatnot. These beings sit down and eat. Abraham feeds them. Okay, these are flesh and blood people who have appetites. The book of Enoch, we're hearing about that. They took wives. Okay, they showed us how to use weapons of war, how to use crystals. Asher is accredited with teaching how to make beer. Love her for that. Love her for that. We got beer.
Yep.
Taught them how to make jewelry. It sounds like a cultural exchange in some ways, because you got to ask, well, they're giving us all this, taught us astrology, astronomy. What are we giving them? Well, it looked like we were giving them children, right? It looked like we were their
Mixing
servants.
bloodlines.
Yes, that's what we're talking about. Now,
Yeah.
if someone else has a better explanation for that, Michael, you're bringing 21st century sci-fi to these texts. Okay, then the burden is on you
Yeah.
to show me where I'm wrong. They weren't stupid people. They got it. This guy got in a chariot. It lifted up. The Hindus, the Vimanas, flying machines, flying cities. Tell me explanation for that. They knew that when Jesus got in the cloud and went up, they knew that a cloud, that he didn't drive a cloud. That was their way of saying this was a crowd. And in Moses' time, the pillar of cloud by day, the fire by night. We also know that some UFOs camouflage themselves in clouds, but they're saying, hey man, it's a cloud in the day. At night, it glows like fire, the pillar of fire by night. It's moving. We camp underneath it in Exodus. That's the definition of a UFO.
Yeah.
It's unidentified and it's flying. The only thing I would argue is it's not unidentified. They know what it is. They're just trying to describe it.
Yeah. Well, since you brought up theology, it made me think of this little list of questions here I have about the theological and spiritual impact of some of these ideas. And one of them, even Michelle, we were talking and she looked at this one question I had and she said, oh, wow, that's a great one. So this one caught her eye. If angels are actually ETs, what does that do to Christian theology? And are we rewriting faith here or revealing something that was hidden in plain sight?
We're revealing something that was hidden in plain sight. Remember at the top of the show, we talked about the word angel, again, malachim in Hebrew, angelos in Greek. The word angel doesn't tell you where they came from. It just tells you what their function is. Messenger,
Job.
diplomat. Yep. That's their job. Okay, so that's the thing with angel. I still would say if you put ET everywhere you see angel in the Bible, it makes more sense.
Okay, now here's one for you. Yeah, I agree. Now this one hit me hard when I was thinking of this and this came up. Is there any, in your opinion, is there any spiritual danger to dismissing the phenomenon outright?
I don't know if there's a danger. Ignorance is bliss. You don't know what you don't know, what you don't want to know. But you will be more shocked. You're in for some surprises when you start seeing beings, because there's a whole slew of beings. There are beings who don't even need ships. There are beings that don't need ships. So you have beings who need ships to get around. You have some who don't. They may be interdimensional. You have beings that don't need bodies. They're just pure energy, right? They're just pure intelligence. The universe is teeming with life. Now you can say, hey, I'll dismiss it, but just because you dismiss truth doesn't mean it's not true. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a danger, but the only danger I can think of is that you'll be like a dinosaur and life will just kind of pass you by unless you run into one of these beings. And then it'll rock your world.
Yeah.
But if you don't know, then you don't know and you don't want to know. It's sad, but everybody's at a different stage of evolution. There was a time in my life when I told you earlier, I didn't believe any of this stuff. It wasn't in the Bible. The Bible says what it means and mean what it says. And I was wrong. I was wrong.
Do you think humanity is forming a new mythology around ETs? One that meets modern needs for transcendence and cosmic belonging?
No, I think that we're just rediscovering stuff that's that's what our ancestors are telling us. You guys are acting like this is all new. These Tic Tac things or whatever. They were Foo Fighters back in the 50s. It's the same thing. That we were seeing things in the sky in World War II. History repeats itself. Or some people say it may not repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. Talking about history. I used to hear this whole thing about New Age, New Age, New Age. There's no such thing as New Age. It's just old wisdom being rediscovered.
It's right.
This is not new. It's new to us because we've been lied to and stuff has been suppressed and whatever. But this is old. These beings have been here. And we're doing the same thing that our ancestors were doing, but hopefully they've taught us a thing or two, that these are not gods. We thought they were, but the way they treated us and the way, these are not gods. Now we have to be careful. Someone told me a couple months ago, I didn't argue with them. It was the elections and, wars and rumors of wars, which are always around. And he texted me, he said, well, how you doing? Because we had a hurricane here, Hurricane Helene. So it was nice of him to check on me and my family. And so he said, I can't wait till these space people come and clean all this up. And I said, yeah, well, we'll see. But so he just took out God and put space people there. And I'm not saying a God is going to clean this up either. We made the mess. Maybe we need to clean it up. But a lot of us have substituted God, or whatever you want to use. That word has a lot of baggage, I know. But now the space people are going to clean it up for us. They're going to help us. We're putting all our faith in them. Now, they may help. If you go back and read Plato and some other, they have come when there have been pole shifts, cataclysms, extinction level events. When you read Genesis, it looks like they just had an extinction level event because the world is dark and void and water. And then they start terraforming, separating the dry land and the salt water. That sounds like there was a cataclysm. But that's another topic. But maybe that will happen. I don't want to count on that. I'd like us to learn to be more peaceful on our own instead of waiting for some people from the sky to help. But, that's what our ancestors did. These are gods. These are gods. And hopefully we won't make that same mistake.
Well,
just because someone has more tech than you doesn't mean that they're more evolved spiritually than you.
Yeah, that is very true. And before we started the show, we were talking about like our schedules and things like that. And you had mentioned being on like the hero's journey. Do you see like a kind of a parallel to that idea of being on the hero's journey and
Yes.
and where we're trying to get or at least trying to inform people about what we're seeing and experiencing and being abducted and all of these things? How is that playing out? How would that play out in your mind? How do you see the parallels with that?
Well, I see the parallels, and it's a great question. That remember I mentioned Hayam Mashed, the former brigadier general. What he was saying is that for humanity to grow up and become part of the larger whole, we need to do certain things. Well, when you're on your individual hero's journey or the shero's journey, call it what you will, you're peeling the onion and you're learning to see life the way it is, not the way you wish it would be. Because you can't make changes until you can see things as they are. And so I started out believing, not questioning. And I want to be clear, if those stories work for you and talking about the biblical stories and whatever that they did as a child, then you stay there. But like Paul said, when I was a child, I thought like a child and I reasoned like a child, but I'm not a child anymore. And so as we grow and peel the onion, and I'm a different Michael than I was back then, and I'd like to think for the better. I got some scars to show for it, but I'm more kind. I'm more authentic than I was. That's part of the journey. A caterpillar becomes a butterfly. And so that, because life always moves towards growth. It's all about growth and change. And if you can't change, you'll be left behind. And that's what part of the journey is. There's a wonderful poem, T.S. Eliot. He says that at the end of all our exploration, we'll go back to the place we started, but we'll know it for the very first time. Right? You never step in the same river twice. It's a different river and you're a different person. And so now I go back to the teachings of Jesus. I go back to the teachings of Buddha. I go back to the teachings of the Bible again, because life is cyclical, but I'm a different person now, so I
Yeah.
see them differently. I know them differently. Life
Yeah.
is not this. Life is cyclical, and so there's more of a richness there.
Yeah.
Maybe there's more challenge there. Maybe, and so that's what life is.
The eyes that you are viewing things with have changed.
The scales have fallen, and there's
Hmm.
probably more. Now, I don't know. That's life in the Milky Way. We live in the Milky Way galaxy. Maybe in another galaxy, it's a different law. But the law here is life is growth, life is change. You reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. That's not personal. That's just the universal law in the Milky Way galaxy. Now, maybe in the Palladians or Zeta Reticuli, there's a different law of life. But this is where we are now. And so those laws have to be respected.
Well, speaking of change in eyes and everything else, you've been on Ancient Aliens and in the public eye quite a bit. And how has the public's openness to these ideas changed over the years?
Woo!
How have you seen
Woo!
things change? I know, big
Woo!
question.
No, it's a great question. But boy, you are good at what you do, brother. I must tell you
Oh,
that. Um,
thank you, thank you.
yeah, you really are. No, well, the mere fact that it's been on all these years has shown you what the public thinks. There's still a little snootiness from people who think that it's pseudoscience, and maybe, but we're talking about possibilities on Ancient Aliens. We're getting you to think. And so,
What was
and
it
they've
that Mike Tyson used to say, or he said in the past, everything was impossible until somebody did it.
exactly, that's right. And so the mere fact that they're still on, I shot some episodes in December that are supposed to end to air later in the year. They're doing an episode on experiencers, first time. So hopefully you can look out for that. They'll let me know, and then I'll let you know. But
Okay, awesome.
yeah, I'll let you know. But because I've just been in contact with them because I'm like, when are we going to do this? It was supposed to come out in March, but then they had the fires,
Yes.
and so yeah. So and that's just showbiz. Some things I've done stuff not on that show, but on a show, and you interview for 3-4 hours, and when you see it, you're on for 10 seconds. You go, well, what happened to the rest of it? So it's just that they pay you, and that's it.
Yeah.
But shows like that are are opening up people's minds. Shows like yours, shows like Mark Eddy does his thing, with Barbara and so DeLong, and this is where we are in the 21st century. This is like a church, or whatever you want to call it. You have a ministry. And the
Confessional, man.
people, yeah, well, listen, they come. They come because you give them good information. They come because you stretch their minds. They come because they're intelligent. Intelligent questions people do. And so this is where we are. This is a ministry. And this is communication, technology. This is where we are going into the age of Aquarius. And keep it up. I can't tell you, it's wonderful to be on this show and keep up as much as you can with the religious, spiritual aspect. The nuts and bolts, yeah, you need that. But in order to change the way we live, because that's what they did for me, they changed the way, and I did with my hard work as well, the way I look at life and the way I live now. They had a big hand in that. It was a transformative experience. And people can buy my books, and I talk about it on Amazon. All my books are on Amazon. My podcast, I got my website, michaeljscarter.com. Go to Reverend Michael J.S. Carter, and all my books will pop up. I got about 5 books on prayer, meditation. I got a handbook called Initiation. It's for people who are experiencers or think they know someone who is, the signs you can look for, of course, alien scriptures and a new world, if you can take it. And I have a book of sermons that I wrote and a spiritual calendar. But this is where it's at, and this is how you're getting this information out to the public because they can't go anywhere else yet. It's still a bit taboo, even though our government is talking about it. But people still raise an eyebrow, not as much, but they can come on your show and talk to your guests, and you're giving them information. And to me, that is a ministry. You and Michelle, I mean, you can call it, I'm a church person, that's not, but you call it what you want. But it's a ministry. You have an audience, you have knowledge, you're disseminating that knowledge, they have knowledge, sharing it with you. This is how the world changes.
Yep, one show at a time.
One show at a time, brother. One show at a time. And how else? How else? If I talk about this outside, they'll ask me to leave. Or they'll lock me up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't talk about this to my congregation. They know about it. 2 people came today. They were new. They were visiting. One guy said, I think I know who you are. I said, well, what? He said, I watch Ancient Aliens. I never seen this guy before. And then one of my congregants said, I was watching Ancient Aliens last night and you were on. So yes, I'm not going to get fired because of it, but I don't preach it because I've almost gotten fired.
Right.
I almost got fired. Someone tried to get me fired. But so far, I'm the only minister or one of very few ministers who's talking about this, and hopefully that'll change. And I'm an experiencer as well, so it's not like I'm just making it up. And so hopefully in the future, we can have some serious conversations with our government. I know our government is having conversations with, more influential religious leaders than me. I'm sure they are. As a matter of fact, I'm really sure they are. But it's going to have to trickle down to the people.
Well, it seems like there's a lot of infighting still going on inside the government. And, I've had Stephen Bassett on here a couple times, and I will fight tooth and nail and say that disclosure is not going to come from the government. It's us. It's everybody who's doing this and talking. It would be nice to have the government kind of on our side to stop the secrecy. Just put it out there. What do you know? Show us so we can get everybody kind of on board with what is going on, or at least knowing that there's something going on, I think is the key. He's very much set in his ways of, he's almost like a lobbyist going to DC and fighting for, disclosure and all this. But me personally, I think that energy should be somewhere else to bring it to the people.
I hear what you're saying, and he's done a lot of good work, and that's
Yes,
where he's
absolutely.
being called. I don't know, and I want to be clear because there are good people working in the government. I know some of them, they're doing their due diligence. There are powers that Congress is fighting with the because one part of the government is holding information that another part from another part of the government. That's unconstitutional. So these are heavy subjects. I don't believe anymore it's going to come from us or them. I think the ETs will decide when disclosure is going to be. That's what I feel. I feel like there's some type of time limit, maybe in the next 2-3 years. And it's almost like if you don't tell them, we're going to tell them. That's what I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got one question here that I want to bring from the audience. And Kernundum asked, what if the answer is we don't know and we can't stop it? How would you react? Or how would the world react? I think he's
Okay.
saying in regards to disclosure.
Yeah. Well, there are three questions there. I'm reacting the way I do now because I know they can't stop it. I also know that it's hard to tell people that we don't control our airspace. You saw how people were flipping out when the drones came.
Oh yeah. Or how
Okay.
about the spy balloons, the Chinese
And
spy
yeah,
balloons?
and I get it. I get it. You can't tell people that because they're going to freak, but they're going to freak anyway. And so you got to be truthful. I'm reacting the way I do now because I know they can't stop it, right? I know
That's
that
right.
some people are going to, you're never going to get 8, 9 billion people on the same page. That's 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 not realistic. Okay? But I do know that now, as much as the truth as you can put out, I'm not talking about government secrets and tech secrets. I'm
Right.
not talking about that. But you can come more with what you do know. We know you know some things that you're not telling us. We know that. Can't prove it, but we know. So come on.
Yep.
We can
It,
handle it. We can handle
mystical
it.
Mystical Awakenings Voidcast says it
Yeah.
perfectly. Experiencers know. Yes.
We do know. And
We
that's what
do.
I was saying before about these military folks. A lot of them are experiencers, but a lot of them aren't. But all this information they could be tapping into with us, but they don't want us. They want you got to be in the military. You got to be in Alphabet City. You've got to be in intelligence. You're cutting
Mm,
off the nose to spite your face. There's a lot of wisdom out here. We're not, ma and pa kettle. We're intelligent citizens. Treat us like that.
yeah. Well, I think it's time for us to get this wrapped up here. So, what's next for you? Any upcoming books, talks, or events, or anything that our
Um,
listeners should know about?
well, not really. Like I said, the biggest thing for me is, my daughter's in town from college. I got a sabbatical coming up. I got 3 months off beginning June 16th. And
Amen.
right, yeah, oh, I've never had a sabbatical before. 3 months this year and 3 months next year. The biggest thing is the Ancient Aliens. We shot like 3 or 4 episodes, and one of them I'm talking about my experiences.
Okay.
And that's never happened before because they never asked me about that. And so I don't know who the other experiencers are going to be, but that's going to be out, they say later on this year. So that's keeps me off the streets. And in the meantime, I'm enjoying my summer and, just living my life.
So, where can people find your work and how can they connect with you? What's the best
They
way?
can go to the best ways you can go to my website, which is michaeljscarter.com. All of my books are on Amazon. And it's my pleasure, Intergalactic Wrangler. Thank you. You can go to Amazon, type my name in, and thank you, Miss Hawkins. And
Thank
you
you.
can just go to the website, michaeljscarter.com. My email is michaeljscarter@gmail. Write me. I will answer you. I will answer you. And if you have any questions, just write me. And I think you'll be able to get in touch with me. Keep the faith, whatever that is, and whatever that means to you. Thank you, Brother Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
And don't let them take away your joy. Don't let them take away your joy.
That's right. Well, Reverend Carter, this has been enlightening and thought provoking. Just a great conversation. I knew this was going to be awesome. And I love talking to you. You have that knowledge and that background that was just incredible. And I
Wayne,
can't.
we should do it again, Wayne,
Yes.
whenever you get time, and
All
we
right.
can go through, and let's go through the Bible. But as a matter of fact, if
Yeah.
y'all come back on, bring your Bibles with you. And because I got chapters and verses, we'll talk about Michael. Michael is fighting. He's trying to go to Daniel. They're fight. Because it's right there. We just weren't told to look at it. There's at least 23 Elohim that are mentioned in the Bible. Milcon, Chemosh, Asherah, Yahweh. I mean, the names are there. These are flesh and blood beings. So we could go through that, and it'd probably take an hour and a half, but we could go through there. We could look in the New Testament,
We
dig
can pull
around
the
there.
evidence right out of the book
Yeah,
itself.
it's right there.
It's right there. Well, again, this has been awesome. Yeah, we're going to get something set up for maybe
Yeah,
later on in the summer here,
yeah, a
and
month or two from now. I'll be
yeah,
around. I'm away
okay,
a week in August, and I'm away a week in June. But other than that, I got to go see my mother-in-law. She's having some health issues, fighting a good
sure,
fight. But I'll be around.
awesome. Well, this has been great, and Michelle's sitting over here, and we are
Feel better?
thanking you very much. Yeah,
Okay,
and
brother.
she's smiling, so she gives the thumbs up. So, all
Okay, that's right.
right. Well, thank you, Reverend Carter. It's been awesome, and we will talk soon.
Okay, brother. Be safe out there. Take
You
care.
too. Take
God
care.
bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, everybody. I knew this was going to be just an amazing show, and even though I'm solo right now with Michelle over here silently typing away, she is here though. But what a great time, and I can't thank you guys enough for showing up and participating in the live show. So again, I just want to give awesome thanks to Metalhead for showing up. We had T-Bone, it was here, Nathan and Dorothy doing the super chats. Thank you very much. Let's see, who else do we have here? Metalhead, Dorothy. We had Intergalactic Wrangler. We had Rick Davis. Conundrum was here. Gary was here earlier. Tabin, and let's see, we had who did I just mention? Somebody new. Mystical Awakenings Void or Vodcast. So thank you for showing up. You guys were just all incredible. And if I don't mention you, Carnundrum. Okay, Carnundrum. Is that supposed to be like the mineral, like Carnundrum, like the rock? So Diane Boss, hey, there you are. There you are. Probably out in the garden again, right? Listening. She's always in the garden, which is good. Which is good. All right, everybody. With that being said, thank you for joining us on this incredible, enlightening, thought-provoking. Hopefully, it gets you to think a little bit differently about the Bible, spirituality. Maybe want you to look a little bit like more into it for yourself. And I guess that's the big thing is doing your own research and explorations. And if you're an experiencer, trying to make sense of everything. So with that being said, all right, everybody, have a great night. And remember, keep your eyes to that sky. We're out. Thank you. Peace out.